I'll go.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Spin Rack. I'm here with the boys Petey and Cal. Gentlemen, say what your names are.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, ready to rock.
Hey, so we've just come off one of the biggest hits for Disney Plus, X-Men 97. Loved by audiences, loved by critics. We're gonna before we even start talking about what's happening for season two, I'm gonna hit the boys and say, hey, how do you think season one went? Particularly that finale. So I'm gonna hit it with before we go to our resident X-Men expert, Petey. Cal, what's your take on it, baby?
I liked it. I thought it was executed very well.
Okay, so we go to our resident X-Men expert, Petey. What's your take on it? I mean, didn't it first of all, wasn't the pacing like extremely fast? Wasn't the some of these stories? I mean, these are several storylines that were put together. I think overall there was a good mesh in getting some of these stories out, but at the same time, it also felt that it was a lot. In one season, they put like everything in kit and caboodle, and we all know the X Men has even more. But wow, I mean, it felt like a roller coaster. What was your take of it,
No,
Mister X?
they had a lot of storylines in there. They kind of force fitted a lot of stuff in there, and I think to keep the pacing up, that's the easy way to kind of have like 3 million stories in kind of one, like not doing the life death that we know. Whereas the first one is was it is her losing her powers and basically having this tough moment where she's the person who's nursing her back to health is the person who created the thing that took away her powers. That's the story. The story they did was that portion, and then it's versus adversary. And adversary doesn't show up till I think the fall. I mean, the character shows up early, but the character doesn't really show up until the fall as a villain, the fall of the mutants. So kind of forcing all that stuff in there. I think to have such a story like the two life death story where Storm has no powers and goes back to Africa, that was a powerful story. So like kind of having adversary into those two stories kind of take away from what was there before. But I think when it got towards the end, like the last stories were kind of that worked the best for me with the whole with them getting back into the original costumes. It was some kind of iffy stuff, but I think the last three work well because it's stuff like what I just said. I think when they did the Goblin Queen, I just remembered that like the whole Blasco, Limbo, Inferno stuff. That's you know ultimately should have been a miniseries about magic. It should have been about Ileana Rasputin. Like she should have taken center, but the X-Men and X Factor about the Goblin Queen and the mutants had this side story about Ileana becoming Dark Child, like basically heroically becoming this dark character at the end, where she saves her portion of the story, her saving the characters, but turning into this like dark character, which she'd still be herself, but she would be stuck in this form, which and then ultimately she seemingly dies at the end of the story, but doesn't. But that was kind of the story that I think for some reason Chris Claremont didn't really have too much part in that portion of the story. But that's what we kind of lost in doing just the Goblin Queen comics and sort of movies. But ultimately, yeah, I think for the people watching it, they definitely enjoyed it. I enjoyed when it got towards the end. I liked that they were in their original. Most of them were in close to the original costumes or some of their most popular costumes, and it ended off with some stuff that because everyone was always playing up with the Cable stuff, like Cable and Cyclops not being there for him. Well, Scott Lobdell did a story where Jean and Cyclops were there for him as a kid. So
I mean, you don't feel that the rogue element of it was very dark,
with her liking what's the name or her getting rougher.
rougher at the end.
Well, Rogue at different points had that was in some. That's the whole point of having these characters that were once villains so they can go dark, so they can let loose when something happens to them. They want revenge immediately. Where Cyclops might be a little more torn, and be put in a spot where, at the end he has to pay for what he did. He has to be remorseful or be hated by his teammates. Rogue, Magneto, when they do stuff, people don't really make too much of it. If someone does something wrong to them, the reaction that Magneto had to the destruction. What was it in the last story? Close to the last story, when he takes his action and does the EMP to the mutants and those Sentinels,
Oh, world, yeah.
those Sentinels, when he does his reaction, it's like, well, you mess with Magneto. What's the name was mess with Magneto. This is the payback. This is what comes back to you. So I think it's kind of, with a character that was a villain, it's kind of expected for them to be able to cut loose and have no problems. Where Cyclops decide I'm cutting Magneto in half, the people would be like, could you make a better decision than that? I know he beat you up, but like, you should have made a better decision, tried to figure, appeal to Eric, like, be friendly to him. Whereas Magneto, if he decided he was going to cut Cyclops in half, you'd be like, well, he's a rough guy. So,
Well, I mean, that's in Cyclops' wheelhouse. But what about the death of Gambit? I mean, wow, now that threw me for a loop.
yeah, that was it's tough because I don't think Gambit has that much story. He felt like he was like a cooler long shot, but I think for effect, and that goes back to Xavier dying. That goes back to Thunderbird. I would say less so Jean, because that was within story, but Xavier and Thunderbird's death was for effect, and this was kind of to there where someone important to the team needed to go, and and Gambit was the one that's decided, and he has the least background outside of being said that he's an ex-trader in the comic books. So, and the fact that Rogue had chose Magneto, so it kind of paid, Rogue having to pay for her decision, even though it's not really, her paying for it. It's going to hurt her a lot that she didn't chose him and now he's gone or had nothing to live for. But.
Well, yeah, I mean, once the Magneto thing, yeah, I agree, over Gambit. So it was one hell of a love triangle. What can you say? And look, what about the Shi'ar? Wow, I mean, like I said, they put everything in this thing, and I really thrown off. The Shi'ar, Charles Xavier comes back because the premise at the beginning, Charles is dead or is missing, and so, but you find out that he's over in the Empire, Shi'ar Empire, and what's it? Deathbird says, hey, if she does a challenge that he has to wipe his memory so that he can forget Earth, and he has to make the decision between wiping his memory and being part of the Empire, marrying her sister, or remembering and going back to Earth. And I guess he chooses Earth, right?
Yeah, I mean, what else can he do? You got to
marry the Empress and become the most powerful man in the Empire. I think it's a no-brainer.
I think they played up to, I think, one of Chris Claremont's things of a character, X-Men character growing up, deciding I need to put aside what I'm doing to saving the world and stopping mutants from dying and grow up and have a family and go off. And the hard part in doing that is that you have this mutant massacre going on. So it's like unless like a fireman isn't able to do their job or something like that, they're usually in line to do that till they get older. Now, Cyclops is like 25. Xavier has a younger body too. His body was replaced. I don't know if they did that in the cartoon, but at the same time, he doesn't seem that old, and there's neither Magneto. So it's like all this strife is happening, and you're growing up and leaving your family out there to fend for themselves because they got to grow up. Like, it's too much stuff going on for him not to be there, at least advising and being there doing something. So I never felt when Xavier leaving and being away, even though for the 2 seconds he was the warlord with Lilandra. I liked it the other way. Well, not the way where she was supplying X-Men with a lot of technology, but I think the relationship has to run its course, at some point because it was too the star-crossed thing needed to have a break at some point because makes it too fantastical, you know. But it was good for a little while, you know. It was there for what was it, till about from like 100 to 270, 277. That's a long time for a comic book relationship. You know?
Very long time. So going back to the conclusion, what do you think of the whole conclusion? You know, the way it ended with, you know, Magneto, with you have Gambit's death, Magneto doing the EMP. You have Charles Xavier coming back to trying to stop Magneto or reverse what he's done before, and then of course how that leads off to season 2. So
So would lead up.
last 3 episodes you said were pretty good, right?
Yeah, I liked it. I liked the tone of the last 3 episodes. I only dislike Cyclops stopping Professor X, leading to an opening for all the other stuff that went wrong with them. So, but otherwise, yeah, the tone was definitely working for me. Energy, and at the same time, you know, there was actual stakes. It was actual feared and hated by the world they were sworn to protect. You know, all that stuff was kind of in there, and some other stuff was in there. But it was a lot of stuff from the comics, so you could see a lot of Easter eggs, a lot of characters. So if they want to do toys, they can slip in. Here's a magic action figure. Here's this. They did a lot of things. They had the 2 seconds. The Hellfire Club walked past for 2 seconds on Genosha. So you know,
Okay, and so overall it's good. So what do you think about the new season? You think they put up some things for us to see for next season?
well, they showed us what was going on in the future and the past, and that was it's kind of tough because the Adventures of Cyclops and I think it was Cyclops and Phoenix in the future. That was done by like Scott Lobdell and Gene Haas. So you're going in there for me for the art. The past, I know they did some stuff with was it Albans or no? What's the name? I forget.
Yeah, apocalypse in the future. In the future.
That's a guy from DC, but ultimately, I don't know. I don't remember that story, so that's open. I'll be open to see what they do with that. The Forge X Men that's happening, they're gonna pull in a bunch of people in regular time to do stories like that. So it's gonna be three things happening at once with a lot of characters outside of Jean. Like three things, so it's a lot to juggle at once. Even though the X Men has had a lot of things, and they have done two stories. They're big groups of characters with these different stories. So if they do it like they did this first season, where they say, "Here's a story like that," and maybe we have some subplots at the end. But they've done the subplots like right at the end of the story, like they did the Mojo story, and then they like slipped in some Storm stuff in there. But the other story was I think the reverse. So they could do it. It's just a lot to juggle in my mind, though. So, but you know, they're pulling from. There's a lot of storyline to pull from. The X Men is one of the few comic book series where they constantly just added new villains, new groups of five to fight the X Men. So there's a lot of things to you know to pull from, which they seemingly they were doing. So.
I'm pulling this out. The last part I'm pulling out of you. Apocalypse finds a Gambit playing card on Genosha. Does that mean and does that mean that Gambit is still alive?
Let me reverse it back to you.
I'll reverse to Cal. Is
Okay.
he still alive, Cal?
Yes.
Thank you, Cal. Cal said yes. There's no reverse back, okay, PD? So yeah, I mean, look, overall the series is well done. For me, it was extremely fast paced. I know in this day and age, everybody believes in like TikTok and stuff, but I felt this thing like some of these storylines was by the time I got done, I was like, yo, what just happened? So it's sometimes I had to rewatch it. But yeah, overall, I think it was they did a pretty good job. And if Disney definitely keeps this level of quality, fan engagement, fan approval, and critics love, I guess, it, then I think they have a very good future. The only problem I see is how do they handle X-Men in the MCU?
And it doesn't matter because they did what they. I mean, with ousting the direct the you know the creative, the executive producer, the head writer, they don't have to worry about, you know, have the fans saying, like they said with the what's it with the Star Wars stuff, where they tell you this guy who did the Clone Wars, he should be doing it. Now they have it where they got rid of this guy. Kevin Feige can say this is our direction, and it could be similar to this or a portion of it. X-Men fighting the Friends of Humanity and having what's the name in there, having Bastion in there, having that as their lead plot. They could use some of this stuff, but not have to worry if you know, someone comes along and, you know, the fans saying, hearing it and being questioning it and saying, well, why didn't you get this guy? He's already gone. He's been ousted. So if they utilize some of it, but obviously I felt that they would have Magneto, Xavier in the movies and Wolverine. They have all that stuff in this. I feel like they're gonna have that stuff in the new series. Just maybe one or two characters we haven't seen before. So I don't think it's too bad. I think they planned it so. I mean, they don't really want to have too many strong creative directors. You know, we've lost Loeb, we lost James Gunn. I never really felt why they would, can't, you know, why would not give them a bigger deal. The Russos haven't really been involved, but they had a heavy hand. So it's like, and I'd love to see those guys back too. So it's in Marvel's hands. The thing's a success. They got rid of creative director, which they usually do. So like, I don't think when they're looking at the X-Men and say this is our X-Men, I don't think they're gonna get a big fan backlash because they already got rid of the guy and no one's, you know, people are some people, but it's not big enough to say. They'd have to see something really bad for them to say get it back. But if they do the X-Men similar to this and it works, they're gonna forget about what was it, Beau DeMayo. They're gonna forget about him. They're gonna forget that he such the good work that the fans like. They're gonna be like, Marvel's back. They did it. I knew that we needed the X-Men back to what's the name.
Definitely, definitely. So look, I guess we're in agreement. So hey, I hope they continue going down this track, you know, because it just bodes well for the quality of the programs that they're putting out. So Spinnerack.
Out.
Out.